As a ground invasion looms, Israel is readying its troops on the border with Gaza while reinforcing defences near Lebanon against a possible attack from Hezbollah. US President Joe Biden is now advising Israel to delay any ground invasion of Gaza to allow them more time to negotiate the release of further hostages seized by Hamas. Joining me now live is former Australia Ambassador to Lebanon and Middle East Specialist at the Australian National University, Ian Parmeter. Ian, thank you so much for joining us. We've been hearing a lot, particularly in the last few days, about Hezbollah and any possible involvement by that terrorist group from Lebanon. Can you firstly give us an insight into who Hezbollah is and why they would be looking to possibly involve themselves in this conflict?
Hezbollah was formed in 1982, and ironically, it was a byproduct of the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982. Israel went into Lebanon in 1982 to expel Palestinians from bases there, and they succeeded in doing that. But at the same time, they radicalised the Shia in southern Lebanon. That's the sect of Islam. And Iran took advantage of that, and with 1,500 revolutionary guards, helped set up Hezbollah. Hezbollah is now a major player in Lebanese politics. It has seats in parliament. Until October last year, it had a majority with some allies of the seats in parliament. It provides social services to people. It's been described as a state within a state. It has its own radio and satellite television network. And it, crucially for this conflict, it has a standing army of about 100,000 trained fighters, trained by Iran, stronger, in fact, than the Lebanese army. And even more crucially, it has about 150,000 rockets, we believe. Now, the question of whether Hezbollah will get involved in the war is not a question for the Lebanese state. The acting Lebanese Prime Minister said yesterday that whether Hezbollah got involved, whether Lebanon got involved, was not in his hands. And what he was referring to was that it's in Iran's hands. Hezbollah will get involved if Iran tells it to. We'll have to wait and see if that happens. The Iranian foreign minister has already said Iran won't stand idly by. But the Iranians say a lot of things, and we can't be sure that they will. But the big concern for Israel is that they could be fighting a war on two fronts, that they may be going into Gaza, and suddenly they may have Hezbollah sending rockets at them. I don't think Hezbollah will send its own troops into Israel because they would be very quickly routed by the Israelis. But if they do get involved, they will certainly send a lot of rockets into Israel, which could overwhelm the Iron Dome defence system which Israel has.
Right. So has Israel then got the power to wage a war on two fronts should Hezbollah get involved?
Yes, it does, mainly because its army is considerable, but is very strong. I mean, they've called up about 350,000 reservists, and they have a standing army of 170,000. Numerically, of course, they far outnumber Hamas and Hezbollah combined. So they can fight a war on two fronts. They may, though, seek help from the United States. And the United States has already got 2 aircraft carriers there. And if Hezbollah gets involved, the Americans could perhaps use those aircraft to attack Hezbollah positions in Lebanon. But what will actually happen if Hezbollah gets involved is that it won't just be Hezbollah that suffers, it'll be the whole of the Lebanese people, because what Israel's tactics will be to try to destroy Lebanese infrastructure, essentially to make Hezbollah pay for waging war against it. It did that in 2006, and it's done it in previous wars. And that tactic seems to be very effective.
So what would be the impact on Beirut? I note that Australia has already upgraded its travel warnings. It's for people who want to travel to Lebanon at the moment. So what would this mean for places like Beirut?
Well, not only has it told people not to travel, it's told people Australians who are in Lebanon to consider leaving, because there really is a real risk that the war might break out. Now, as I said, if war does break out involving Hezbollah and Israel, it won't just be southern Lebanon that's affected. It will probably be the whole of Lebanon. In 2006, the airport was bombed and aircraft were no longer able to take people out. At that time, there was something like 30,000 Australians in Lebanon on holidays there because it was summer, and the Australian government hired a very large boat to evacuate them to southern Turkey in order to get them out. So those who don't leave now could end up having to be evacuated if war breaks out.
Why do you think Israel has not yet pulled the trigger and launched a ground invasion? Every day we hear that troops are preparing for that eventual stage. Why do you think it hasn't happened just yet?
I think it's doing two things. I think one is that it's actually scoping northern Gaza to see where they can. There might be tunnels that could be used by Hamas to attack them if they go in. We understand they have actually sent in some strategic teams to do this. But the second one is that the state of Qatar in the Gulf, which has a record of negotiating between Hamas and Israel, has been negotiating for a release of the hostages. They've now got another two out, and we understand that the United States is putting some pressure on Israel to hold off on the offensive while further negotiations take place, with the aim of getting more hostages released by Hezbollah if possible. The real risk, of course, of an invasion is that some of the hostages may be in what will be a war zone in northern Gaza. And if that's the case, their lives would be in very serious danger. So the more hostages that can be released, the better it will be, obviously.
We know that Australia has issued a number of repatriation flights to get Australians out of Israel over the last week or so. Do you believe that these repatriation flights should be extended now to Lebanon?
Well, that's an interesting question. People have been told to get out at this point. I don't know that repatriation flights to Lebanon are being considered. One of the problems with planning that, of course, would be that if the war breaks out, say tomorrow, for example, we don't know when it might break out, an aircraft which was aiming to land at Beirut airport could find it actually a dangerous place to land. An aircraft wouldn't land. That's why the Australian government has told people who are thinking that they may need to get out if a war starts to do so now. I think there could be a risk in waiting for war to start before relying on evacuation flights to get in. As I mentioned, in 2006, it became necessary to get a boat to get Australians out of Lebanon.
We'll be watching this one very closely. Ian Parmeter, great to speak with you. Thank you so much for your insights this morning.
You're welcome.